Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for the first ever episode of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half. You can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined tonight by the best co-host that was willing to sit beside me for what we were paying, which was nothing. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It's Mark Henry Jr. You can follow him on Twitter at MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. We're really starting to get closer and closer to football season. It's really starting to creep up. Big Eagles signing this week, so it's got the football running through my veins. I'm ready to start talking some Eagles, start talking some NFL.
Absolutely, and we've got a great show lined up for you guys today. We're talking Steven Nelson. We're talking position battles to watch in Eagles training camp, and we'll rapid fire some major headlines from around the league. And so let's get right into it. Mark, you mentioned Steven Nelson. Just as the offseason was sort of settling in, we're done with the draft, we're reporting to training camp, all of a sudden the Eagles make this big move. They signed Steven Nelson to a one-year deal worth up to $4 million. In your opinion, how does that impact the Eagles' secondary, their defense as a whole, and their chances to win the division this season?
Yeah, starting with the last part first, actually, going into that signing, I did all my win projections. I went through all the schedules, so I made sure everything was evened out throughout the league. I had the Eagles at 8 wins, which I know a lot of people are going to be shocked by. A lot of people are going to think that's overshooting it, and we'll get into that a little bit when we get into the Jalen Hurts conversation. But really, I had it at 8 wins, and I'm lower on the division than most. I had Dallas at 7 wins, and I had New York at 6 wins. I had Washington at 9, and I really think it's going to be a toss-up between Washington and Philadelphia. And like I've said this on many pods, I've lost track of where I've said it. I think Washington and Philadelphia, if you bet both of those teams to win the division this year, you're going to cash either way because they're both over plus 200. So I think that's a solid bet right there. I think those are the two best teams in the division. I think Shane actually agrees with me. I think he has a bet on that as well. I'm sure he'll get into that, but I think Steven Nelson is enough to me. I think that gap between Washington and Philadelphia was razor thin because I actually have far less belief in Ryan Fitzpatrick and the Washington football team QB situation than I do in Jalen Hurts. So I think that Washington and Philadelphia were neck and neck. This Steven Nelson signing to me fixes what was the number one concern on the team. I mean, I don't know how many times Shane, Dives, all of us during draft coverage or pre-draft coverage or post-draft coverage, we're complaining that we didn't feel like we had a legitimate second corner to push Avonte Maddox to the slot where he should be playing. And I think Steven Nelson's that perfect guy. I think it's a no-brainer signing, up to $4 million, like you said. So it's not like we broke the bank. And to people that are like poo-pooing this signing and complaining about this signing, we were assuming that the roster we were looking at was the roster we were going into the season with. So this is like found money. This is like finding money under your car or something. Like, this is just an added bonus to the defense. And you look at what Howie's been able to do. I know Howie Roseman is not a popular person in Philadelphia, or is not going to be a popular person on the Painted Lines YouTube channel, I'm sure. But you look at what he's been able to add to every level of this defense. Ryan Kerrigan for really cheap on the D-line. I always get Eric Wilson and Anthony Harris mixed up on which position.
Me too.
Eric Wilson, because they both came from Minnesota. For some reason, it always blends in my brain. Eric Wilson and Anthony Harris, both solid players according to PFF grades that we added on the cheap at linebacker and safety, which were both positions of need. And now I think the biggest signing of all four is obviously Steven Nelson, who, if you compare him to Darius Slay, in his PFF grades, they're obviously sort of similar in terms of their size and their build. And I'm not saying he's better than Darius Slay. I know Shane is probably closer, to my opinion, on Darius Slay than the consensus Eagles fan. We're not exactly huge Darius Slay guys or huge fans of the trade or signing that they made last year. But I think Steven Nelson is right on par with Darius Slay, if not a smidge better.
We got the Godfather himself in the comments saying, "First day of training camp and my beard is in playoff form. Impressive." I'm not trimming it till we win a Super Bowl, or till I got rid of time, which is probably going to happen first.
I got rid of mine, and I'm sick about it.
So yeah, you mentioned the division, and yeah, So I placed some futures bets when they first came out. I put $5 on Washington to win the division because I thought they would win the division. And then I put $5 on the Eagles to win the division because it's not necessarily that I thought they would, but it's fun to root for your team, and the odds were tremendous long shots. And so I figured Washington probably wins, and if they do, they cover my Eagles bet. If the Eagles win, that's awesome. And I didn't think it was likely the Giants or Cowboys would. Now I feel really good about that Eagles bet. So we look at Steven Nelson. He had a 68.1 coverage grade from PFF a year ago, which isn't fantastic, but I promise you it's far better than what we were going to be playing on the outside. He started 15 games in 4 of the last 5 seasons, which is huge for a team that has just had dreadful CB play and has had so many injuries at the position over the years. And so I think he's a good player. I think he's being overrated by Eagles Twitter. I think he is a perfectly good to top end CB2. I think he might be better than Darius Slay at this point, who I'm lower on than consensus as well. The unfortunate thing for me is that it's only a 1-year deal, which you knew it was going to be. With the cap falling dramatically, these guys are going to take 1-year deals, and then they're going to try to sign big deals when the cap balloons next year. So my only fear with the trade is that it would delude the front office into thinking we're Super Bowl contenders and we make a Jannard Avery or a Kenny Golladay trade at the deadline. I don't want to be buyers at the trade deadline. Now, you can check back near the trade deadline. If we're like, 7-1, okay, I'm in. But I don't want us to be, 500, 1 game out of the division lead and thinking we need to go make a move at the deadline. And I was also counting on dreadful CB play to force us into taking 1 or 2 in the first round next year. So hopefully it doesn't impact our long term, because Nelson's only here a year. Slay's probably only here at 1 to 2 more years. And so we still need a lot of help. But a secondary of Rodney McLeod, Anthony Harris, with Slay and Nelson outside and Maddox in the slot is dramatically better than what we put on the field last year. And we invest so much in the defensive line and we wonder where the results are. Well, the coverage will help the results of the defensive line. So I see it as a win all the way around. And to me, it makes the Eagles the favorite to win the division now. I got some pushback on Twitter. It said, nobody thinks that. Vegas has them last. Well, last year, Vegas only hit 3 of the 8 division winners, and 3 of the winners they picked finished in last place. So Vegas is not reality. Vegas is what people's money says, and people's money is always going to be on Dallas and teams like that. But if you look at the Eagles' biggest weakness, what is it? Well, it was the secondary. It's not anymore. And so is it linebacker? Maybe, but we signed one. We've got Alex Singleton. Is it quarterback? It's an unknown. Maybe Hurts isn't the answer, but his running ability is going to give him a high floor. But you look at the other teams in the division, the Cowboys have no defense. Great offense, no defense. And they weren't winning last year even before Dak went down. And then the Giants and the football team don't have a quarterback. So for me right now where I'm sitting, it looks to me like the Eagles should be the favorite to win the division.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I had us at 9-8. I had us at 8-9 before the Nelson signing. I had Washington at 9-8. I changed that. I shifted it. I have us winning 9 games, and I think 9 games is going to win this division. I think some people are deluding themselves into thinking that New York, Dallas have taken this jump, or that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to provide some sort of steadiness for Washington to get them to move up a level from where they were last year. And a big stat that I wanted to say about the Giants, the New York Giants won 2 games outside of the division last year. One was against the Cincinnati Bengals, who were starting Brandon Allen, and one was against the Seattle Seahawks in a game they won 17-12 with Colt McCoy starting at quarterback. That was a fake 6-10 season. And I'm not that 6-10 is some amazing record, but I had them at 6-11, and I got some pushback saying, "Oh, how are they worse than they were last year?" And I think 6-10 might have been a bit of a lucky record last year. So as long as they don't get to play as many backup quarterbacks and they don't feast on the division as much this year, which I don't think they will, I think I have no faith in New York Giants to compete for this division. And Dallas is obviously good enough to compete for the division offensively. My doubts are always going to be on the defense with that side of the ball in Dallas. Obviously, there's so much talent on offense in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup out wide, Zeke and Tony Pollard in the backfield, and Dak Prescott. Hopefully, I mean, whatever. Hopefully coming back healthy. So for their sake, so their offense is going to be extremely good. Their offense was extremely good to start last year. Dak Prescott was on pace to set records. They weren't winning a lot of football games. I forget what their record was exactly when Dak went down, but it was a losing record. And one of those wins was due to a watermelon onside kick. So a lot of the wins that did happen in the division last year were lucky even. Like, we were looking at one of the worst divisions last year, and it could have been worse. So I think it could be just about the same this year. And last year, what ended up winning it? What did Washington finish? Either 7-9 or 8-8. 7-9, right?
7-9.
Yeah. So I think 9 wins comfortably wins the division this year, and I feel comfortable saying that Philadelphia has a really good chance to get to that 9-win mark. I mean, it's you said what's the biggest weakness? Linebacker obviously is a concern. Jalen Hurts obviously is a concern. I would say my biggest personal weakness is still, even after 3 straight years taking a receiver in the first 2 rounds, my biggest personal concern is depth at the receiver position.
Yeah, that'll certainly be something to watch as we go through training camp. So training camp kicks off today. There's some interesting position battles to watch for the Eagles. We'll run through a couple of them and see what you think. So let's talk about left tackle first. We got a couple offensive line positions, but left tackle, what do you think is going to shake out at left tackle if you were going to handicap that? Or who are you rooting for to take the left tackle job?
I mean, it seems like I don't have a hardcore opinion as much as Eagles Twitter seems to. It seems like Eagles Twitter has decided it's Mailata. Am I reading that wrong?
No, I think that's general consensus among the fan base.
Yeah, I think you would probably have a better grip on the O-line position battles and in terms of who's going to fit in where. It seems like Mailata was the better player in terms of when I've seen them play, and that's all we can really go off of. Obviously, Dillard missed the season last year, so who knows if he would have been able to improve. I don't think that the training camp reports from last year were very promising pre-injury. So who knows with what Dillard is at this point.
Yeah, for me, I think, I'd say it's about 70% chance it's Mailata, maybe like a 25% chance it's Dillard, and I think there's a non-zero chance that Jack Driscoll ends up winning that job because I know they were high on him. To me, though, Mailata has a major strength and a major weakness. His strength is his strength, and he still struggles with technique sometimes. And Dillard is the opposite. He's got all of the technique, but he can't anchor against power. And one of those is just so much more easily correctable than the other. And Mailata has more experience than Dillard now at the NFL level. He's grown, he's progressed. Now, progression's not linear. He could regress at any time. And so you're not going to be stuck on him, but I think he's probably got the best chance to win the job. And then you move one step in, and we've got left guard. We've got Isaac Seumalo, the entrenched starter. But then in the second round, the Eagles picked Landon Dickerson. So do you think Dickerson gets a look at left guard? Do you think he is just an all-around backup? What's your feeling on that?
I would have to imagine Seumalo gets the first shot at starting. I mean, Dickerson's probably the first guy up if either the left guard, center, or right guard goes down, I imagine. I think he's got versatility to play all 3 of those positions. So I imagine they'll probably just have Dickerson kind of learn behind those guys to start out the year. Maybe if someone struggles, then it's a conversation. Obviously, Kelsey's not getting benched, so and Brandon Brooks isn't getting benched if he's healthy either. So it's if Seumalo struggles, maybe we could see Dickerson come in, but I think the most likely scenario is Seumalo starts out the year.
Seumalo seems to have that one game every year in like the first 3 weeks where he's just dreadful, and then he gets on everybody's hit list. And then he plays fine the rest of the year, and everybody just tainted by that one game and thinks he's terrible. I think Seumalo is an underrated player. I think he's a perfectly acceptable starter. It seems to me that Dickerson is probably like the Jason Kelsey backup this season. And Seumalo's been pretty healthy, but Brooks hasn't. And so I think you sort of cross-train him. But the thing to me is, like, Kelsey's done after this year. So if you bench Seumalo to play Dickerson, well, you need Seumalo again next year. And so is it worth it to shoot his confidence? Like, you're going to need them both next year. So to me, unless Dickerson just like dramatically outproves Seumalo, I'm looking for Seumalo to be the starter. But I mean, given our offensive line injury, Dickerson's probably going to see some time at some point. The real question is, has anybody told Howie that training camp started yet and Jason Peters is still a free agent? Like, are we starting that train again?
Oh man, he's only willing to play one side unless you give him a couple $1 million bonus.
All right, so let's move on to another one. We've got running back. So Miles Sanders is the one, but in Indianapolis, Jonathan Gannon, he used a stable of backs. He had Marlon Mack, he had Naheem Hines, he had another guy whose name's slipping my mind right now, but it seems like they're going to take the same approach, this running back by committee in Philly. So who do you think's the number two? I mean, you've got Kerryon Johnson claimed off of waivers. You've got Boston Scott returning, Jordan Howard. We drafted Kenny Gainwell. How do you think the backfield's going to look this year?
I can't imagine Jordan Howard makes the team. I mean, maybe that's the hopeful side of me. I did think the first year Jordan Howard was here, he was pretty productive to start the year at least. But he has proven to not be an NFL running back, I think, in recent years. So I think he probably gets cut. And I personally think Boston Scott is probably a special teams player or is probably a backup on this team that doesn't see much time. I really think it's going to come down to Gainwell and Kerryon Johnson. I think Kerryon Johnson is going to kind of fill that Jordan Howard role from a few years ago or from last year even. And I think Gainwell's going to kind of be a wait and see approach. I think you're going to have to see how he plays in the preseason, see how he plays in training camp, see how he is in terms of pass blocking. Is he able to go out and catch the ball? I know that he did some of that in college, but who knows what Gainwell's skill set will be for this offense. So I think Gainwell's going to be a wait and see type thing. And I think Kerryon, we know what we're getting a little bit, and I think he's a solid depth running back. And that could be really helpful for this team. But Gainwell obviously does have upside that could really, change this offense. And like you said, with that Indianapolis Colts offense, they had a great running game with Jonathan Taylor last year with Hines backing him up.
Taylor.
Yeah. And then even before that, they had a guy, I think Wilkins. He was getting a lot of carries too. They always seem to use three backs. So if Gainwell's good, that gives them three legitimate options to give the ball to.
Yeah, I kind of look at it. I mean, there's basically three types of running backs. You've got your home run hitter, that elusive guy. You've got receiving backs and power backs. And Sanders is that elusive home run hitter. But that can't be it. You got to have that guy that can gain yardage, down after down. And to me, that's Kerryon Johnson and Jordan Howard fit that power back mold. Now, Howard he's a really good pass blocker. That's actually probably his best trait at this stage of his career. But he doesn't have much juice the last time he's played. I anticipate him not making the roster. And you've got Scott and Gainwell. They both sort of fit that receiving back archetype. To me, I wouldn't be surprised if it's Sanders and Johnson with the majority of the load. And then Scott, probably a running back three, special teams guy. I don't know that we're going to see a lot from Kenny Gainwell this year. I know people are excited about him, and he's the draft pick I was most excited by, but I think he's coming into a situation where they'll try to use him with maybe some slot stuff, and they'll use him, but I think he will come in fourth in carries on the roster.
Yeah, so. I guess I'm just I'll be surprised if Boston Scott plays a similar role as he has in the past. I don't think we're going to get to a point this year where Boston Scott is the lead back in this offense like we've seen in the past at times. I think if we got to a situation where Miles went down, I think Gainwell would take I think that they would try to groom him to take a step up instead of, because we've seen what Boston Scott can do in that role. And I think that the returns are pretty limited, or at least he has moments for sure, Boston Scott, but I think
against the Giants
is pretty limited. Yeah, for sure.
Just make him RB1 for 2 games a year against the Giants and we'll be good.
Yeah, he's a giant killer.
Then there's some stuff to watch on special teams. I don't know if you've got a take on any of this, but Aaron's, I don't even know how you say this guy's name, our punter. I've never heard his name before. He's the only punter on the roster, so there's no competition there yet. I don't know if we're going to roll with him. I don't know anything about him. And then you got punt returner and kick returner. Like, the only thing I know is your punt returner cannot be Greg Ward. Like, he doesn't even try to return punts, and then half the time he doesn't even catch them, and he just lets them down it inside the 5. So Greg Ward cannot be the punt returner. Maybe Boston Scott's your kick returner. He's been that before. I'd like to see Jalen Reagor with a shot at both punt and kick returns, honestly. I know, people talk about the punt return touchdown against Green Bay, and yeah, he fumbled that ball before he picked it up and housed it. But Deshaun Jackson did the same thing once, and we call it the miracle at the Meadowlands. So hopefully he can kind of smooth that out. He is who I would love to see as our return guy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely down to see Rager do it. Is Boston Scott? He doesn't do much. He hasn't done much punt returning, right? I know he does kick returning. I don't know if that's a better option than Greg Ward. Greg Ward shouldn't even be labeled as a punt returner. He's just a fair catcher. He just goes for the fair catch, which has been better than some of our past punt returners in recent years. Who it would be better off if they fair call it every time, but. Greg Ward can't be the punt returner. He adds nothing. I don't really care much about kick returning, especially with the new rules the last couple of years. It seems like it's mostly touchbacks at this point. But with punt returning, you can gain an advantage when you can have a guy who can not only catch the ball without fumbling, but also maybe pick up 20 yards once every once in a while and put you in good field position and win you the battle in field position for a little bit there. So hopefully you're right. Jalen Reagor does seem like he could thrive in that role. There could be a chance that they look at him as a bit too important to use on the punt and kick returns. If you've heard my opinion on Reagor before, I don't think he's all that important, but hopefully I'm wrong. We'll get into that at a different level, but Jalen Reagor seems like he'd be a good option as a punt returner.
We've got Matthew Walsh chiming in on YouTube, says he agrees Reagor should be used on punt and kick returns more this season. I mean, if I get maybe he's too valuable, but he's got to prove he's valuable as a receiver before I'm concerned about that. So go be Deshaun Jackson, and then I'll be concerned about you getting hit on punt returns. And I'd be glad if that happened. I mean, if I lose a good punt returner because he became a great receiver, I'm more than okay with that. So 100%. Speaking of pass catchers, we've had the season-long drama with Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz was gone. He wasn't coming back. He was getting traded draft night. He was going to Buffalo. Merrill Reese saying that trade is imminent and nothing has happened. And now Howard Eskins reported that Zach Ertz has been working out at team facilities and he's, quote, over the issues. So what's going on with Zach Ertz? What do you think we're going to see with him this year?
Who knows, man? This Zach Ertz situation, I feel like I've been wrong on it the whole time. I really did think Buffalo made a ton of sense. The whole time I thought Buffalo made a ton of sense. I think Zach Ertz, it's a tough situation to talk about. He's one of my favorite Eagles of all time. Obviously, a super important Eagle on the only team that really matters in franchise history. I know that that's a controversial opinion, but it's not, I'm half joking, but he was the guy who scored the game-winning touchdown in the most important game I've watched as an Eagles fan. So I'm always going to be biased towards Zach Ertz. He was bad last year. He was for sure bad, and there's really no excuse for having him on the roster this year if you want to have Dallas Goedert grow into a role that you obviously drafted him to grow into a few years ago. But if there's nothing out there, and at this point, I don't really want to trade him for a 6th or a 7th round pick. I'd rather keep him around in case Goedert gets hurt, so then you have Ertz as a lead tight end in that situation, and Goedert hasn't been the picture of perfect health in the past. So at this point, I kind of just want to have Ertz around in case, as almost like a break glass in case of emergency for if Goedert was to go down.
Yeah. See, for me, I know that Eskin reported that he's over the issues. He's not over the issues. He knows nobody else is going to pay him $8.5 million this year. And let's be honest. You can deal with a lot at your job for 1 year to get double or triple the pay. So it makes sense from his perspective to show up, to play, to be like, hey, I'm going to take this money and run. But I got to wonder what the Eagles are thinking. Like, this has got to be the year you find out what Dallas Goedert has. His contract's up after this year, and he believes himself to be a top 5 tight end. He's said that in the past. And so you can't pay him like that unless he proves it this year. How's he going to do that with Ertz on the roster? Are you paying Ertz $8.5 million to be a backup? If so, to me, that is a gross misuse of resources. And I know 12 personnel has been the buzzword thing. Like, I don't want to see 12 personnel. 12 personnel has sucked every year we've ever used it. And so, to me, like, you need 3 receivers on the field. You can't fit 2 tight ends on the field. So are we going to pay a backup $8.5 million, or are we going to make the guy we want to sign to a top 5 tight end deal a backup? It's just, I don't know. And people will say, it's all about, this whole year is just about figuring out what Jalen Hurts has. And I agree with that. But Jalen Hurts is not a tight end friendly guy. He's a vertical passer. He's a sideline thrower. He doesn't have that middle of the field working it to Ertz on repeat like Carson Wentz did. He doesn't need tight ends like that. He doesn't have chemistry with Ertz. I mean, he barely played with Ertz last year. Ertz was hurt when he took over. And so it's not like he has this great rapport with Ertz. It's not like he uses tight ends a lot. So for me, I just don't get it. I would rather move on for whatever we could get, if anything, and make this the Dallas Goedert year.
I would say, just to push back only a little bit on the point about Jalen Hurts not being tight end friendly, Dallas Goedert's production didn't really drop off too much with Jalen Hurts in as opposed to Carson Wentz. I actually think it was pretty neck and neck. And now, like you said, Zach Ertz was out when Jalen Hurts first came in. I forget what game Ertz came back in. But Zach Ertz was out when Hurts first came in, so that could be a factor to why Goedert was able to keep the same level of production. But I do actually think that Goedert is athletic enough to work in a Jalen Hurts offense, and I think that there's a lot of improvisational, route running in a Jalen Hurts offense, and I think Goedert's athletic enough to take part in that. And I think he can also work the middle of the field and kind of cover up some of the Jalen Hurts inefficiencies. But I hear what you're saying. I want to see Dallas Goedert, and I want to see what he can become if you really unleash him and see what the most positive version of Dallas Goedert is. And Zach Ertz being here definitely hurts that. Now, the one thing I'll say, and it came to my mind just a little bit when you said we want to sign Dallas Goedert to top 5 money. Now, this is, I know you mentioned something in the Discord that is a little bit different than what where I'm going to go with it. But what if they're keeping Zach Ertz around to play them, 60-40 Goddard, maybe 65-35 Goddard, and keep those Goddard stats down so he doesn't get any crazy offers anywhere, and they can get him for similar to what I think Logan Thomas signed for today. I want to see what that number was, but it wasn't a crazy contract for Logan Thomas that Washington signed. I think, I believe that I saw the tweet. It made him the 7th highest. I think you're going to pull it up, but it made him the 7th highest paid tight end in football. And it didn't seem like a crazy number to me. And my first thought was, I wonder what Goddard would be in relation to that.
It looks, actually, I'm not finding the numbers.
Okay. I thought I saw the numbers somewhere.
I did find an article that his new deal with Washington bodes well for Dallas Goedert landing a huge contract extension. Okay, it's Logan Thomas was $24 million over 3 years, $8 million per year, 10.3 in guarantees. He's now the 7th highest paid tight end.
Yeah, that seems perfectly. What do you think Goddard would get in relation to that if he were to get a 3-year deal?
And I think it depends a lot on what he shows this year, because he's never been that feature guy. And when he did finally get the chance last year with Ertz out, it was with a quarterback that he hadn't practiced with much and a new quarterback. And so it's a huge year for Dallas Goedert. And it would be this is what I said in the Discord, it'd be the ultimate Howie move to do this, try to keep Ertz to drive his costs down, and you just piss off Dallas Goedert, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to go play for Dallas, the team I was named after, and be an all-pro for 8 years. So it's fine. I love Zach Ertz. I think he makes the team better being here, but the question for me is just at what cost, and I don't want that cost to be figuring out what Dallas Goedert is this year.
It's perfectly reasonable. You're absolutely right that a lot of it for me does have to do with just loving Zach Ertz. So maybe if he was a guy that showed up here after the Super Bowl and then had all those issues last year, maybe I'd feel differently. Or if it was a continuous year-over-year thing like Alshon Jeffrey kind of turned into, maybe I'd feel differently. But because it was only 1 year of difficult, rumors, behind-the-scenes drama, everything like that, I'm kind of willing to forgive it as long as everything kind of, goes normal this year and he doesn't take too many snaps from Dallas Goedert. And I really do think that Dallas Goedert will play more snaps than Zach Ertz when it comes down to it. I don't think Sirianni owes Zach Ertz anything. I don't think the Eagles owe Zach Ertz anything. I mean, if another team wanted Zach Ertz, he'd be on another team. It's really as simple as that. And that's really all you have to say about it. And if the Eagles decided, instead of cutting this guy, we'll just keep him around basically as Goddard injury insurance. I actually want to look up how many games Goddard's played in each year. That's something I wanted to look up before I started talking about this. But I do understand the logic behind kind of thinking, let's keep Zach Ertz around in case Dallas Goedert gets hurt, because if Dallas Goedert gets hurt and Zach Ertz is, 80% of what he was 2 years ago even, then that's still a pretty solid tight end. It's probably a top 15 receiving tight end, a top 10 receiving tight end in the league still. So I understand the logic behind not just cutting him, I guess, is where I'm coming from.
Goddard played every game his rookie year. It looks like he missed one game his second year, and then he played in 11 games last year. So he's missed 6 games over the last 2 years.
I guess I'm just thinking of last year. For some reason, I thought I thought he had a bigger injury 2 years ago. Maybe that was at the end of the year. I'm not sure. But maybe I'm just remembering that one game that he missed. But yeah, I definitely understand keeping Ertz around instead of cutting him. But obviously, the best situation would have been trading him for a 4th or a 5th round pick before this year's draft. So you could have drafted someone to bring in, obviously, and be a depth piece. Where I kind of struggle is, do I really want to trade Zach Ertz for a 5th or a 6th round pick for next year at this point, when obviously I'm focused a little bit, at least on competing this year and seeing what the guys on this roster have. So, but I understand, this is a rebuilding year somewhat, or at least a retooling year. So I completely understand if they were to make that move in a couple days or whenever it could go down. But I kind of lean towards thinking he's probably going to be here.
All right. So we talked a little bit about Jalen Hurts, how we got to figure out what he is this year. So what do you need to see from Jalen Hurts this season to move forward with him as the franchise guy? And then what do you think the chances are he meets that threshold?
So I'm as high on Jalen Hurts as anyone you'll find out there. Maybe I'm definitely here to listen to the concerns that, is he the franchise guy? Is he the guy? Is he, someone you could see taking you deep into the playoffs down the line? And I hear that. I understand the concern. But going off of something similar to what you said earlier, I think that his running ability gives him such a high floor. And I think that his first year and his first 3 starts, taking out when he came into the one game and then when he had to get taken out of the Washington game, because even though he was playing poorly, we were probably going to win. So taking those 2 games out of consideration, his 3 starts compare very favorably to guys like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson when they first came in their rookie year. And a lot of people have questions about Jalen Hurts' arm strength. And I hear you, and the velocity isn't there on intermediate throws sometimes, or on even short throws. The velocity can be a problem. But an insane stat is that 46% of his pass attempts went at least 10 yards last year, which was the highest percentage in the league. The next guy was Deshaun Watson at 41%, a guy that I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. But Jalen Hurts was throwing the ball deep, and I know that was Doug's offense, whatever it may be. Maybe Doug was just finally happy to have someone who could throw the ball deep, because Carson Wentz definitely didn't have that in his repertoire. But I think that Jalen Hurts would just have to show me, everything he showed me last year, and cut down just a little bit on some of the negative stuff, and just a little bit, improve just a little bit from a completion percentage standpoint, and just a little bit from a couple standpoints. And it's the threshold for me is really just going to be, can he compete to win this division, or can he compete whatever the easier goal is, either the division or the seventh wild card spot. Either, whatever that easier goal is, he has to compete for one of those things. I know that our Vegas over under is 6.5, floating up to 7. So that might be, a biased Eagles fan take that we have to compete for the division or compete for the playoffs. But I think with this roster, and I think with the moves that we've made this offseason to help Jalen Hurts out, I think he should be able to do that if he plays to a similar level that he did last year, and playing alongside a bunch of, nothing. A bunch of guys last year at receiver, and a bunch of guys that Jalen Hurts played a lot better with than Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was struggling all year with a similar supporting cast. He threw for 338 and 342 yards in his second and third career starts. I know that there is context to that. We were behind in some of those games, but that he's the second QB in NFL history to throw for 335 or more yards twice in his first 3 starts, and his 847 yards are the 6th most ever by a rookie in his first 3 starts. So I just have to see more of the same and just cutting back on some of the mistakes that he did make, some of the turnovers, improving a little bit from the short and intermediate game. And I think Devonta Smith will absolutely help with that.
I need Hurts to be an average NFL quarterback this year. And I wouldn't say he was that last year, but it's extenuating circumstances. I need him to fall in that 14 to 16 range of quarterbacks. And I need him to show potential to be a top 10 quarterback the next year. And you say maybe that's high because you look at teams like the Giants who have Daniel Jones who stinks. And, you say, well, they're giving him more time than that. Isn't that too quick to pull the trigger? But the Giants don't have 3 first-round picks next year. The Eagles are in a position where this offseason they can get QB1 in the draft if they want to. After that, you just go back to your regular picks, and it's a roll of the dice with how good you are and how well you can move things. And so to me, this is it. It's this year. It's do or die. He's got to show average competency with an upside, it being a top 10 quarterback. And so to me, what I'm looking for, that means I need to see him layering throws into the middle of the field. He avoided throwing between the hashes last year like the plague. And a lot of times, and I've watched more film on Hurts than anybody, but a lot of times when you bring in a new quarterback, it's these sideline reads. You're eliminating half the field. You're not having to worry about dropping balls between linebackers and safeties. And so much of what he did last year was reading one guy. I mean, their whole offense was sail on one side with a backside 9 route. And if we get a free release up the side, we'll throw the deep ball. And if not, we're just high-lowing the corner. And that was the majority of the offense with Hurts. And you can do that for a little while. But eventually defenses are going to take that away. And that's going to be taken away this year. He's got to show that he can layer the ball over the middle of the field. And I need to see him make more than one post-snap decision. And then beyond that, I just want to see him improve his ball placement. You talked about velocity. That's hard to improve. That's fine. His arm is adequate for the NFL. But I need to see his ball placement improve. And people throw out the 52% completion percentage. I mean, a lot of those are throwaways. I don't mind that. That's a smart play. But I'm talking on the passes he does throw. I want to see that placement be better because all completed passes aren't the same. And your ball placement can be the difference in 1 yard after catch and 15 yards after catch. And right now that placement's a little scattershot. So I want to see improvements in those areas. I'd give it likelihood. I was going to say I'd give him like a 30%-ish chance. I like Jalen Hurts. I'm pulling for him. If Jalen Hurts doesn't succeed, it will not be because he didn't put forth the effort. It won't be because he's mentally weak. It'll be because he just didn't have the talent. And that's fine. I'm pulling for him. I hope he's the guy because imagine a scenario where we go into next offseason and Jalen Reagor has proven that he's a wide receiver too, and Jalen Hurts has proven he's a franchise quarterback, and we've got 3 first-round picks. Like, that'll spin a franchise around fast. I'm not confident in it. I will definitely be watching it. I'll be putting out film studies on him through the year, but there's some definite things I want to see improvement on.
The closer – oh, yeah.
I don't think you're the only one that likes me here. I hope not. I think Mark and I are buddies when we're not arguing about certain players that we might get to later. But.
No, we're on the Darius Slay. We're on the Darius Slay's overrated train together. But for me, Jalen Hurts, you said 30%. I'm probably closer to, that 50 to 60% that I really do think he can be that guy where we go into next year with 3 first-round picks saying, maybe let's not look at quarterback. So I think that's obviously, like you said, the most ideal situation. And that kind of translates to, I think, what we're going to get into next with a quarterback that's on the market. I personally am a guy that I think the way to win in the NFL is to win with a guy on a rookie contract at quarterback. I think it's been proven time and time again that is the best way to win in the NFL. And obviously, when that rookie contract expires and that guy proves himself, you do have to make a trade. And we've seen now that when you do that, it's not a death sentence. We did that Carson Wentz trade. I know everyone, it did affect our cap for sure. But we did that Carson Wentz trade. We got the pick that we got. It wasn't a death sentence. After next year, it's not going to affect us any longer. So I I really think the way to win in the NFL is to win with a quarterback on a rookie contract. And that's what we have in Jalen Hurts. And if he can turn into that guy that we hope he can turn into, having those 3 potential first-round picks, definitely 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick, worst case. So having those 3 high draft picks with a quarterback that you have locked in, where you can look at guys like Derek Stingley, cornerback from LSU, Kyle Hamilton, my guy, safety from Notre Dame, Thibodeau, D lineman. So there's so many guys in the next year's draft that I'm already excited about. I'd rather go into next year's draft looking at everything but quarterback, because if you're in that situation, that's when you can, if a disgruntled skill position player, wide receiver comes up and you can make a trade, or if an incredible defensive player comes up and wants to request a trade, then you have that ammo to go make that trade, and you don't have to spend so much ammo to go get a franchise quarterback. Because we've seen, whether you want to move up in the draft or whether you want to go trade for your guy, it's going to cost you. So obviously the hope is that we have the franchise guy on our roster in Jalen Hurts.
All right. So one more Eagles question, then we'll kick it around the league. And if you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, you can drop a comment here and let us know what you think. But who is your Eagles breakout candidate for 2021? Who's the guy you think is going to take a leap this year?
So for me, and it really goes hand in hand with the Jalen Hurts conversation, it's Miles Sanders. And I'm by no means a Miles Sanders guy. So I believe his over under in terms of rushing yards this year is, I think it was 890.5. Someone that had me on their podcast was asking me about player props, and they asked me about Miles Sanders, 890.5. And I was like, that seemed really low to me. So I went back and checked. He was over 800 in both of his last 2 years, and he missed 4 games in the 1 year. So I think Miles Sanders over 890.5 is a solid bet, because I think Jalen Hurts is going to help out the running game, not only because of his running ability, but because of what his running ability is going to open up for the running back. We've seen time and time again with mobile quarterbacks across the NFL, what they've been able to open up for their running backs. Guys, even going way back to the first start of dual threat quarterbacks coming in with guys like RG3, Colin Kaepernick, Tim Tebow. Those are guys that transformed average running backs like Noshawn Moreno and Alfred Morris into guys that were putting up like 1,400 yards, 1,500 yards, and top 5 running back numbers those years, because of what their mobility was able to provide in terms of the defense not being able to key in on the running back. And I think obviously Kerryon Johnson and Kenneth Gainwell could cut in to Miles Sanders' work, but I think his ability to catch the ball, hopefully, he had a lot of drops last year, so hopefully the drops issue is something that's fixed for sure. It didn't seem like that was as much of an issue in his rookie year, so hopefully he can get back to that. But he's able to catch the ball. He's able to, break home runs. I know you had a tweet that I liked a lot, and maybe you can find it, about his home run hitting ability and what his stats would have been without a couple of those big plays. So that's definitely something concerning with Miles Sanders, where he is such a home run threat and he's not a consistent between the tackles, get you 4.5 yards every time, and move the chains running back. He's someone who you give 10 carries and you hope that 2 of those are going to go over 15 yards, and that can really help your offense. But I think with Jalen Hurts, I think it's going to cut down on those 5 straight carries of under 4 yards stretches that Miles Sanders seems to get in sometimes, because I think that the defense is not going to be able to focus on him nearly as much as they have in the past.
Yeah, I got some not so kind thoughts about my Miles Sanders tweet that you're referencing. I'll have to see if I can dig it up here. We've got Twitch chat agrees with you. Think Booby Miles is in for a big year. And yeah, I hope you're right on that. For some reason, I'm not able to find that tweet, but it was something along the lines that if you took out his 3 longest runs, his yards per carry was like 2.1 or something like that. It was like 30-something% of his yardage came on 3 runs all season. So home run hitter, struggles with consistency down to down, and I'd really like to see him take that step. For me, my breakout candidate and the guy I think is the biggest winner in the Steven Nelson acquisition is Avonte Maddox. Avonte Maddox had a 37.8 PFF grade last year, and he allowed a 102.7 passer rating when he was targeted. Terrible year. Followed up, he had a terrible year the year before too. It's just been a bad career arc for him. It's not his fault though. He is 5'9" with sub 30-inch arms. Those guys aren't ever supposed to play outside. As a rookie, he wasn't expected to play, and he got thrown into the free safety role with a bunch of injuries we had. He'd never played it before, and he showed promise there as the free safety, as the third safety, kind of in the slot. He was 1 year away from starting outside, being terrible, and getting run out of town. In my opinion, he's going to slide into the slot now. He can take some reps as third safety. He can be protected from those bigger receivers on the outside, and he can use his quickness defending the two-way releases out of the slot. He might fail, but if he does, he's going to do it at a position that he at least had a chance at. I liked what I saw from Maddox as a rookie. I don't think he was ever asked to do something he was capable of doing again. And so I think he's the big winner. He slides into that slot, and I think he'll be fine in the slot this year.
Yeah, I honestly, I couldn't say it any better. I don't even have much to add. You took the words right out of my mouth. Avonte Maddox is the big winner from the Steven Nelson signing, and I think you're right. If he would have had to been playing out of position yet again as an outside corner this year, I do think he would have been ran out of town. And it's something I never thought about before you mentioned it. Philly does like to run cornerbacks out of town a little bit. It does seem like I've never really thought about cornerback being as unpopular a position as it is. It makes sense, but I guess I've never thought about it like that about Philadelphia. Obviously, I've had some nightmares about Nnamdi Asomugha, Byron Maxwell, guys like that, but I never thought about it like that. And I think you could have been right. That could have happened to Avonte Maddox. But I found your Miles Sanders tweet, and
okay.
you were a little bit off on the yards per carry, but there's another part of the tweet that I found to be the most impressive or the most shocking stat. So you said Miles Sanders rushed 164 times for 867 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. That's very good yards per carry in 2020. If you remove his 3 longest runs, now this is the stat that shocked me, which accounted for 27% of his rushing yards. 3 runs counted for 27% of his rushing yards. That is a wild stat. I'm not sure how that lines up with other running backs out there. I can't imagine that there's too many running backs that have over a certain amount of rush yards where 3 rushes are 27%. But the yards per carry, if you take that out, is 3.9, which isn't as bad as you said, the 2.1, but 3.9 is by no means acceptable. So that he gets into those stretches where it really feels like, man, we can't get anything going. And then boom, he has that 50-yarder and it's like, oh, Miles Sanders is the best. And I know this because I have a couple of buddies in my chat who are Penn State alums, a couple of friends. They love Miles Sanders. They think he's a great guy and whatever. I have no problems with Miles Sanders as a guy. But when they picked Miles Sanders a few years ago in the second round, I voiced my opinion. I do not like investing high capital in running backs because I never want to pay a running back. And I wouldn't want to take a second round pick on a guy that I don't have plans on paying, which I still don't really think the Eagles are going to pay Miles Sanders, but whatever. So since then, my Penn State fan friends have really got on me. They think I hate Miles Sanders, which they don't get. I want the Eagles to be as good as possible. So whatever. They think I hate Miles Sanders. And every time Miles Sanders breaks one of these long runs, every time he breaks one of these long touchdowns, I get, oh, Marco, is Miles Sanders any good? And I have to be like, I mean, did you watch the rest of the game? Like, did you watch the 2 balls he dropped, the 5 carries in a row where he couldn't get anything going, the quarter and a half where we got like 10 rush yards? But I get what Miles Sanders is at this point. I actually, this isn't a fantasy football podcast, so I'll talk about that more in the Tough Cover podcast, but I'm really high on Miles Sanders from a fantasy football standpoint. He's being ranked as a back-end 3rd rounder, top-end 4th rounder. I have him more as a late 2nd rounder in fantasy in 12-team leagues. So Miles Sanders is a guy that I really do expect to take a leap. And I also wanted to hit on something that you mentioned earlier that I forgot to mention because I got sidetracked by the idea about your Miles Sanders tweet because I like that 27% stat. But the Jalen Hurts thing that you said, if he doesn't succeed, it will not be because of anything but the fact that he didn't have the talent to. Because Jalen Hurts, you were absolutely right. He is the type of guy you want to lead your football team. He's the type of guy you want in your locker room. What I always go back to with him is what he was able to do at Alabama and Oklahoma. And he was the guy at Alabama. He won all these games at Alabama. He was the big man on campus. And in the biggest game, he goes out there, he doesn't play well. He gets yanked. Tua comes in, saves the day and wins. And Tua becomes a superstar, obviously. Instead of doing what the easy thing would have been to do and what most people would have done and what happens in college football all the time, they transfer right away. Jalen Hurts stuck it out and stayed around because he thought staying at Alabama would make him a better quarterback, and it ended up paying off. He came in the college football playoff and had a huge game, beating Georgia, avenging the game from the year before where he struggled. And all year, the media gave him every opportunity to say something, that he was upset about the situation with Tua. They gave Saban every opportunity to, say something. And Jalen Hurts could not have handled it with more class. He just handled it like an absolute professional. And then he goes to Oklahoma in a pro-style system with Lincoln Riley, and he obviously excelled and flourished there, and that's what made him the second-round pick that the Eagles took, because before he went to Oklahoma, he would not have been a second-round pick. And so what Jalen Hurts was able to do by improving in college and sticking it out and everything he was able to do in college, I think says so much about his personality. And everyone on this Eagles team, every word you hear about Jalen Hurts seems to be positive. Everyone seems to be behind the guy. I think he's a leader. I think that that's an awesome trait to have as a quarterback. So I think you're absolutely right when you say if he doesn't work out, it will be because of talent. And I'm a little bit more bullish on his talent than most.
So let's skip around the league a little bit here. We got some other quarterbacks in the news. Let's start in Houston with Deshaun Watson. It's come out now that Texans are willing to listen to trade offers for Deshaun. So what team should be interested? And then more importantly, should the Eagles be interested in Deshaun Watson?
This is so tough for me. It's so tough because just to give a little background, Deshaun Watson, anyone who knows me or anyone who follows me knows I am, just like Shane, I am an absolute draft nerd. So I care about the draft more than the Super Bowl. I always say the draft's my Super Bowl. So I love the draft. It's how I find my favorite players around the league that aren't on the Eagles. And Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, I've never been more right about a draft than I was that year when I was yelling at everyone, telling everyone Deshaun Watson beat Alabama. Deshaun Watson did everything you'd want to see a college quarterback do, and I thought he should have been the number one pick. I thought Mahomes should have been number two. So those are my two prized draft children. So at first thought, if this was a year ago, or if Carson Wentz struggled 2 years ago, and we were looking at this conversation a year ago, Deshaun Watson, no brainer. Let's talk about what it costs. I don't know if maybe this is me being soft. I don't know. Maybe this is me maybe the Eagles won 4 years ago and I'm not as desperate to win at all costs. I don't really, and this isn't a football. This isn't, this is Chalk Talk. This is an X and O podcast here, but it's hard for me to look past the sexual assault allegations. It's hard for me to, it's a moral quandary. It's like a moral dilemma that I'd have to deal with on a weekly basis to watch my favorite football team play. And I just got done going through this long list of why I think Jalen Hurts is an awesome dude. And and obviously Deshaun Watson is a better football player than Jalen Hurts. That's not the conversation. But it would be really hard for me to be like, all right, we're going to go with Deshaun Watson and we're going to pay the premium price that Houston's asked for all offseason, even after all of these allegations and after all of this drama and with all the drama that he's going to bring to the team. It's hard for me to look at from a football standpoint.
Yeah. For me, I don't think any team should be interested. If you're facing 22 lawsuits for sexual assault, 10 criminal accusations, a total of 24 women of alleged misconduct, nobody should be interested in trading for you. When you add on top of that, the Texans' reported price is a combination of 5 high draft picks and starting caliber players. Given the circumstances, nobody should offer that. Nobody. Definitely the Eagles shouldn't offer that. You're rebuilding. You believed in Jalen Hurts enough to draft him in the second round a year after you paid Carson Wentz. Give him a year to try it out. If you aren't willing to spend a first-round pick on Justin Fields, a guy who's not coming in with character concerns, don't go mortgage everything for Deshaun Watson with all of this going on. And beyond that, you got a first-time head coach. Nick Sirianni's never been a head coach before. Don't saddle a first-time coach with that kind of drama and with that kind of off-field distraction. So to me, not interested at all. This is an X's and O's podcast, but emotions make some decisions and that's okay. And rooting for a team is supposed to be fun. And I know everybody on the Eagles roster is not a saint, but I can't root for that guy. And I don't want him anywhere near my football team.
To go off your point that not everyone on the Eagles roster is a saint, and I know that this isn't fair, and it's like, you know, this goes back to the moral quandary of if a bad player does something, he's going to get thrown off the team, and if a good player does something, it's going to get swept under the rug. And I actually feel the opposite way, because if there's a backup on our team who's, like you said, not a saint, but it's hard if you're trading for Deshaun Watson and you're trading for what they're going to ask for Deshaun Watson. That's the face of your franchise. That's the QB. That's the guy on the billboards. That's the guy that's the guy the kids are going to be wearing the jerseys of. Like, and again, this is like, I hate to be this guy talking like this on a football podcast, but it's just hard to look at from any point beyond that. Now, the only team to kind of make light of the situation a little bit, not at all, but the only team that should look into it a little bit is the Washington football team, because they have no morals anyway, and they really do just need a quarterback so badly that maybe you look past it and you hope Dan Snyder can blow it over after he just hired his wife to be the new CEO to combat worries about workplace stuff with women. There's nothing like bringing your wife in to quell concerns that your workplace behavior is inappropriate, but whatever.
Yeah, the other thing is we talked about the importance of that rookie window. Well, Deshaun Watson's rookie window is over after this year, and so you just can't give that much up for him. Even without this, I wouldn't be willing to give up what they're asking, but with it, there's no chance. So let's rapid fire a couple more, and we'll get everybody out of here. So real quickly, what do you make of the drama unfolding in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams?
I've said this many times. I don't have a lot of sympathy, and I'll include Russell Wilson within this, even though the Russell Wilson stuff has completely died down. It seems like he's kind of happy now. I don't know exactly how they came to grips, or they had a come to Jesus meeting. I don't know what happened with Seattle and Russell Wilson that kind of quelled his concerns, but I'll throw Russell Wilson into this. I think Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers need to take a hard, long look around the league at what some of the other top quarterbacks in the league, besides Patrick Mahomes, are working with, and then take a look at what they're working with. And obviously, Green Bay has made a lot of questionable decisions. The Jordan Love pick is something that I've never understood. And obviously they haven't made enough picks to give Aaron Rodgers weapons. Russell Wilson doesn't think that the Seattle Seahawks have let him cook, as he would say. So there are obviously things that they're not incorrect to complain about. But when you're looking at what Aaron Rodgers has to work with, and you have Aaron Jones, who's been the most productive running back in football outside of Derrick Henry over the last 2 or 3 years, and then you have Davante Adams, who's been a top 3 wide receiver over the last 3 years, and you have an excellent O-line with one of the best O-linemen in the league in David Bakhtiari. You have a team that's a team that's been in the playoffs consistently almost every single year. I don't think Aaron Rodgers has as much to complain about as he wants to. And I think that a lot of it just has to do that he's marrying a celebrity who doesn't want to live in Wisconsin anymore. And I think he's causing a lot of trouble about it. Obviously now Davante Adams, I guess they broke off extensions with the Packers. There's rumors that Davante Adams wants to go play with his buddy Derek Carr, his college teammate and quarterback from Fresno State. And it does seem like Vegas would have the money to throw around next year to do that. So I just think Aaron Rodgers, and it seems like no one's saying this. It seems like everyone's on Aaron Rodgers' side for some reason. Everyone's like, oh, Green Bay's so dumb. And I get the Jordan Love pick is stupid. But Aaron Rodgers came back and played for the Packers last year. If he had such a problem with the Jordan Love pick, he could have told Green Bay to trade him last year. And I could have understood that at the time. But the fact that he went out and he played like an MVP, or he won MVP, and then they lose in the NFC Championship game, and then he comes back and what's the reason this year now that, like, why this year instead of last year is he trying to force his way out? And I guess he's coming back now, so it's fine. But it does seem like it's only a 1-year deal they're doing. Like, they're making, like, I forget what the exact report was, but the framework is so that he's going to be gone next year.
Yeah, he's basically coming back if they agree to void his 2023 year and basically give him a player option at the end of this year. So he's out after this year. His contract's voided unless he decides he wants to come back. And I mean, there's an obvious disconnect between Rodgers and the GM, but you got all these reports going back. He had issues with his previous head coach. He's got issues with his family. Is he a diva? Absolutely. But does he make your team better? I I mean, beyond the shadow of a doubt. And so here's where I circle back to the Eagles on this. If the Eagles aren't satisfied with Jalen Hurts after this year, Aaron Rodgers is the play, not Deshaun Watson. He wants to run the team, fine. He can't be any worse than Howie. Let him do what he wants. Bring him in and see if you can make a run with it. Now, I'm being a little facetious there, but if you're looking at veteran quarterbacks on the market, you want a known quantity. You're going to have to pay for either one, and you're going to have to pay either one big bucks. I'd rather throw it in with Rodgers than Watson.
My dream, even above both of those guys, is Russell Wilson, the guy I was also talking about there, because obviously a little bit younger, so a little bit longer of a window. But what's up, Jameson? This guy, he was on our NBA draft pod the other night.
Jameson said hi, Mark from YouTube. Technically, he said hi everybody first, so I'm going to put myself in everybody and say he said hi to me first. So
but
last one here. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, last one here. Chandler Jones requested a trade from Arizona citing contract issues. He is on the last year of a deal. He's got a cap hit of $20.8 million. Doesn't see himself in the long-term plans after the J.J. Watt signing, and so he wants out. In 2019, he was the fourth highest graded edge defender by Pro Football Focus. He had the fourth highest pass rush grade. In 2020, he had a biceps injury, ended his season early, so we can't really pull a lot from that. So who could be interested in Chandler Jones, and what do you think it takes to get him on the move?
I think a lot of teams should be interested in Chandler Jones. I think Chandler Jones is an awesome player. You look at a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, and I think Jadeveon Clowney gets a lot of buzz. He was a former number one pick. Obviously, he was a huge name. He was the number one recruit coming out of high school. So Jadeveon Clowney gets a lot of buzz, and I think Chandler Jones is a better player than Jadeveon Clowney and doesn't get nearly the amount of buzz. So I almost think that every single AFC contender besides the Browns should be looking into this. When I was really just racking my brain, looking at contenders that should look for a pass rusher, they were all in the AFC. I don't know if that's just because Arizona is not going to trade him in the NFC, or the NFC West is full of most of the contenders in the NFC, really, because there's no one in the East that's going to go make a move. The Packers aren't making a move with their situation right now. So it really comes down. And Tampa, I don't think, is making a move with what they have. They brought back everyone from their Super Bowl roster. So it's really going to come down to, does Kansas City have any ammo left? I don't know what the Frank Clark situation is right now. I know he's in some legal trouble. I don't know if they expect him to play or if he expects to be suspended or what the situation is there with Frank Clark. So they have a hole on their D line for an impact player in Kansas City. The obvious one that everyone has brought up is Baltimore. People think Chandler Jones is a perfect fit with the Ravens, and the Ravens seem to love to make those types of moves instead of getting Lamar Jackson a receiver for the first time in his career. But that's fine. They can add to the defense. It would help plenty for that Ravens roster. And then the Bills, I've heard the Bills mentioned. I don't think the Bills make a ton of sense. They went out and drafted Carlos Basham and Gregory Rousseau, two of my guys, in the first 2 rounds. So when you spend your first 2-round picks on 2 DNs when you only have one position open to start, I don't think that they're going to go then and spend also draft capital next year on Chandler Jones for a trade. So I don't think the Bills make a ton of sense. So it's really, I would say the Chiefs, the Ravens, and then 2 dark horses that aren't exactly contenders. I would say the Raiders are always in the conversation to go get a defensive end because they need a pass rusher. And then I would say the Miami Dolphins, just because they have so many assets and because they have a hole there on defense for a pass rusher.
Yeah, I think the Ravens make a lot of sense. They know edge is a big need. They spent a first-round pick on Odafe Oweh. I can't remember how you say his name now. It's been a little bit, but
it was Jason. They changed. Yeah, I forget what Odafe Oweh. Yeah.
Yeah. They're a contender. They've got a quarterback on the final year of a rookie deal, so they could make a big splash now without it having to damage their cap moving forward. I think the Bills make sense. They drafted Rousseau in the first, so they know it's a need. I know you're real high on Rousseau. I wasn't super high on him, but when I watched his tape, I see a super athletic guy that needs to learn how to play the position, how to use his athleticism. And so I definitely don't think having him in the first should prohibit you from getting a Chandler Jones and bringing Rousseau along a little more slowly. Same situation, contenders with QB on the last year of a rookie deal. And I've heard some smoke around Miami maybe doing a swap of Xavier Howard. So
that's what I saw too. That's why I mentioned him.
I mean, he's likely going to earn like a third round compensatory pick if he walks in free agency, assuming he just goes for a year, which begs the question too. Like, he wants out because he wants a long-term deal. Is he going to be happy to go play for Baltimore or Buffalo for 1 year? I don't know the answer to that, but if he does the 1 year and then walks to free agency, he's likely going to net a third round comp pick. And you could get a situation like last year where the Vikings traded a third and a fifth for Yannick Ngakoue, and then they netted a fourth back in a comp pick. So you can sort of play that game. I don't think they're getting a first round pick for him. He's 31 years old. He needs a new deal. He's got a big cap hit. You're not getting a first. Why would you trade him for a third if you could get a third round comp pick? So I think it's got to be a second rounder or a player of kind of equivalent value. I think that's kind of what they're looking at. But they seem pretty adamant they're not going to trade him. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I the only thing with Rousseau, I do agree that Rousseau is a project, so I don't think he'll be a starter. I actually do think the guy they took in the second round, though, with Carlos Boogie Basham, I think he's a bit more NFL ready, and I think he's the guy who probably projects to play more than Rousseau right away. But I would understand if they went and got Chandler Jones. It's just, it seems like so much draft capital to be spending on D end when you have your quarterback on a rookie deal and you need to maximize every chance that you have to make a swing on. And that's another team. I wish that they had a more legitimate second receiver and a more legitimate tight end option. So just complaints where some of my draft children, I'm not Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. I want my guys to have more receivers.
Fair enough. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this time. Mark, you got any final thoughts you want to get in here that didn't fit anywhere else?
Yeah. Just thanks everyone for joining us for episode 1. We're excited about this. Shane made an awesome intro video. I love this background too. But I think we're going to find some fun ways to get people involved during the year. I know that me and Shane were talking about something on Fridays where we do a preview for each week. Maybe we make some picks. Maybe we get some fans to make some picks, or we make an ESPN group or something like that. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I think that could be fun. But yeah, we're excited to see what this podcast turns into going forward.
Absolutely. So for everybody out there watching, thank you for joining us for the first ever episode of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and let's be honest, we know that you do, be sure and smash that subscribe button on YouTube or click follow there on Twitch so you don't miss the next episode. You can follow me on Twitter, again, at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'll be tweeting out our recording schedule. You can follow Mark at @MarkHenryJr_. So from me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.
I didn't